morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Here's a look at the ES and the daily time frame. Right now, narrow range heading into the RTH Open, just 40 points of range inside day right now, and inside the previous session's range. At the moment, still inside the multi-week compression here, still building out within that range. That's a lot of energy building up here. That could ultimately lead to a continuation into the all-time highs here. So that buildup of energy, a pullback and bounce, and we're into the previous quarter's highs, outside quarter, new all-time highs. Once we get there, do we turn back in to the range, or do we see further expansion? So right now, still in the range with an upward bias for the morning. For the morning here, the early thing to keep an eye on is the previous session's midpoint and the previous month's close price right there. That's the level we identified yesterday afternoon. If price pulls back to that zone, bulls want to defend it and look for a check mark move higher. From the low, we were looking at 59.10. If we bounce off 59.10, do we get about 80 points of range? That will take us into about 59.90 up above. So right now, holding that edge at 59.10, looking for a squeeze through two-day highs for a continuation up. Modest squeeze, but if we just kind of go sideways in this range, that's kind of where we're at right now. With an upward bias, at some point here, expansion could open up the next couple of 100 points of range. All right, looking at the NQ. NQ has a very similar development here. Nice compression at these highs, multi-week range that's developed here after strength. That would suggest a further continuation to the upside, especially to the quarterly highs. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for price to continue higher into that blue line right there. That is the previous quarter's highs. You're working into the all-time highs at that point. And once we do get into 22.5 and those all-time highs, we may see a little bit more upside, but then do we start to see some toppiness that brings us back into the range again, or do we see some sort of big breakout and expansion phase? So right now, still building that energy. You can see a little pullback here into the previous month's close and previous session's midpoint. Nice little bounce and hold. Can we extend this thing today to the upside and get a little bit of range toward the extreme of the range? So again, compression here, upward bias with a shot to go get that new all-time high over the course of the next several days. All right, looking at crude oil. This one's up 1.25% right now. It's really been struggling to get through 64, but 64 is being primed for a breakout move. That's your 64 level right there. The previous session with a nice rally here, G-squat day, holding the midpoint here this morning. A little inside day holding pattern here with an upward bias. Inverted head and shoulder style pattern here that's developing. Neckline right at 64. If this thing can break through 64, like I've mentioned before, it opens up the next 10 or 12 points to the upside. We could be looking at a rally to 70 to 72. All right, looking at the YM. Here's the YM daily time frame compression as well. This one's compressing right around the quarterly close, the previous month's close, and a flat year-to-date VWAP. That flat year-to-date VWAP is this line right there. It almost looks like a perfect straight line because it is over the past month, and the YM has been perfectly trading right there at value and at basically kind of like an equilibrium here. Previous months and previous quarters closes all kind of in the same spot and happily trading in the center of that range. Inside day right now, kind of like the other markets, still compression with an upward bias right here, and we're looking for this thing to start squeezing toward new all-time highs. That would take us up toward 45,000 up above. Again, building that energy for a continuation to the upside. Looking at Bitcoin here, Bitcoin holding 105 right now. This one has pulled back off the 110 previous quarter's high. was an outside quarter briefly to the upside, pulling back a little bit. Can this become a bullish flag that leads to some strength, or do we start to fail back into the range below, back toward value at around 95K? Got to keep an eye on around the 103 level of failure there, and you could be opening up 95 down below. But can this thing stay above that level and either hold at these highs and build energy, or push to new highs? That could open up those upside targets at 120 and 130. Looking at ETH, right now ETH futures here up about 3%, but still compressing. Big time energy being built in here. That's at least 800 to 1,000 points of energy. Again, this one needs through 2,800. Through 2,800 opens up a squeeze that fills a gap at 3,400 and opens up a pathway toward 42. This market could see a pullback, perhaps as deep as 2,000, maybe a little bit lower, 2,200 to 2,000, somewhere in that zone, and that could provide a little bit of a continuation to the upside. Maybe not even a drop that deep. 2,300 might be enough to get this thing opening up toward 3,400 down the road. So building energy with an upward bias. Got to stay above 2,000 to 2,200 right now, but any pullback into that zone could still provide a bouncing off point. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.